What it do, ladies and gentlemen? I'm actually in the middle of editing this video for Tim Tebow, right? And I got to thinking, I say his name a lot in this video. So I have a fun little game if you guys want to play it. If you guys can tell me how many times I say Tebow, and you write it down in the comments and you're correct, I'll give you a shout out in my next video. If it's multiple people, it's multiple people. Just thought it'd be a little fun idea to do. But let's go ahead and start with that intro. Tim Tebow at one point was on top of the world, having one of the greatest careers in college football history. Tebow was selected in the first round by the Denver Broncos to be the long-term answer for a team on the rise in the NFL. Tebow time was a crazy time in the NFL. Just when you thought his teams were out, he would always find a way to make an improbable comeback. Tebow never really ascended to a capable starting caliber quarterback in the NFL, despite his career technically ending in 2021. Still, the hype around this guy was something to behold, leaving analysts like Skip Bayless in awe of Tebow mania.
Now, Tebow is more box office than Kobe Bryant? Yes. Than Kobe Bryant? Yes. Is Tim Tebow more box office than LeBron? Yes.
At the end of the day, though, we all know Tebow was at best a one-year wonder. But I wanted to see just how bad Tim Tebow actually was in the NFL. As always, at the end of this video, we will give Tebow a final grade for his overall career. So be sure to stick around for that. And if this is your first time on the channel, please consider subscribing. We're on the road to 2,000 subs and we post weekly NFL content. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and begin at the beginning, as we always do. Born in the Philippines to two Baptist missionaries, Tebow was homeschooled during his adolescence and was instilled very early on the Christian values that to this day he holds strongly. Tebow's homeschooling would continue all throughout high school, only showing up to a public school in Florida for football purposes only. After his senior season, he would commit to play for the Florida Gators and Urban Meyer. We always come back to Urban Meyer in one way or another on this channel. In college, Tebow took his game to another level. Despite being a freshman in 2006, he still played a big role in the Gators becoming national champions. Tebow would follow that up with a 2007 season that could compete with just about anyone as the greatest season a player has ever had in college history. This season, Tebow would throw for over 3,200 yards to go along with 32 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. But it does not stop there, as he proved that he was a real problem on the ground, totaling 895 rush yards with another 23 rushing touchdowns. Tebow shredded plenty of records in 2007 and would earn the Heisman Award for his efforts, the first sophomore to ever win the award. By the end of 2009, he was the SEC's all-time leader in rushing touchdowns for any position, so that includes running backs. He was a two-time BCS champion and a BCS championship MVP, all while on arguably one of the greatest Florida teams that have ever been constructed. With a resume like that, you'd imagine that this guy would be a top 10 or top 5 pick easily. Except, many scouts were skeptical if his skill set would transition well to the NFL. While there was no doubt that Tebow was an amazing football player, many questioned if he had what it took to be a quarterback in the NFL. Guys like Mel Kiper Jr. called to question Tebow's intangibles, and according to WalterFootball.com, Tebow had terrible footwork, he had bad touch when he threw the ball, and he had a very long release. Other problems included that he would lock onto wide receivers, which made it easy for defenses to know where he was going, and he had terrible accuracy issues. A lot of things you don't want to hear from a potential round 1 quarterback. Still, Tebow had enough upside where at pick 25, the Denver Broncos gave him a shot and he would be heading to Mile High in 2010. Josh McDaniels, who was Denver's head coach at the time, had high praise for Tebow, saying that he has all the traits that you look for, but admitted he was not ready to start in 2010. Going into the 2011 season, new head coach John Fox wasn't ready to release Tebow just yet, so Tebow would once again start the season as the backup. But following a 1-3 start by Kyle Orton, he would be pulled for the fan favorite. And here is where Tebow time, Tebow mania, everything was truly born. Tebow would go on to remain the starter for the Broncos in the 2011 season, and during this run, the only way I can really call what it was, is that it was one of the most unique seasons that I had ever seen out of a quarterback. There were so many highs, but there was equally so many downs. It began in his first start against the Dolphins. Down 15-0 and have already been sacked 6 times, Tebow and the Broncos would still go ahead and score 18 unanswered points in the final 3 minutes, cementing the first of many comeback wins in 2011. Tebow time would go on to have 4 more fourth quarter comebacks, bringing the Broncos to the playoffs at 8-8 after starting the season at 1-4. While on the surface this seemed great, we've got to peel back some layers as to how they got to 7-4, because there was a lot more going on in these games than what the records indicate. While yes, Tebow did go 7-4, if Tebow wasn't in the middle of trying to make a comeback, for the most part, the Broncos were getting blown out in every single game that they lost. In the 4 games that Tebow couldn't pull out a fourth quarter comeback, the Broncos were outscored 50-133, with the closest game being a putrid 7-3 loss to the Chiefs in the season finale. To add to this up and down roller coaster of a season, Tebow finished the season with a 46.5 completion percentage, the worst out of the 34 quarterbacks qualified that year. He would finish 28th in QBR and passer rating, yet strangely enough, he ranked 4th in yards per completion. In the playoffs, most fans remember that Tebow and the Broncos had one more game-winning drive in them, and that would be in the wild card game against the Steelers. Despite a shaky game, when it came down to it, Tebow yet again delivered. In the first play of overtime, Tebow would find Demaryius Thomas down the middle for an 80-yard touchdown to advance to the divisional round. So Tebow yet again had one of the wonkiest stats that became synonymous with his play on the field. He had completed just 10 passes for a completion percentage of just 47%. Yet, Tebow managed to throw for 316 yards, an incredible amount of yardage for just 10 completions. This would result in him having a 31.6 yards per completion average. This game would be later dubbed the 316 game. And if you didn't know, one of Tebow's favorite verses from the Bible comes from John 3:16.
Austin 3:16 says, "I just whipped your ass."
Tebow loved this verse so much that he would often wear this verse on top of the black face mask that he would typically wear. So combining that with another miracle, so to speak, in knocking the Steelers off in the wild card game, the hype and legacy of Tebow time grew yet again. The Broncos' magical season would come to a crashing halt when they would get destroyed by the New England Patriots in the following round, 45-10. When I tell you that it didn't matter how much they lost by, I mean it. With this lone season, Tebow had developed a cult, not only in the NFL, but also in mainstream media. Everyone was Tebowing and seemed to be ascending as one of the faces in the NFL. While the Broncos were ready to run it back, things took an unexpected turn in the 2012 offseason. The 2012 offseason had one big storyline. News broke that Manning would not be returning to the Colts, so the sweepstakes for Peyton Manning had now begun. While there were many teams like the Dolphins and Cardinals that took their shot at Manning, ultimately it was John Fox and the Broncos that were able to come away with the Manning sweepstakes. I'd say there was a QB controversy, but with Peyton Manning on your team, there really wasn't. Despite turning things around for Denver and only in his 3rd season in the NFL, Tebow would be traded to the Jets. From there, Tebow would have to fight for the top quarterback spot against Mark Sanchez, who at this point was on the fence himself, so he did have a shot. While Sanchez struggled throughout the season, the calls for Tebow to be put in got louder. By the time the Jets had finally pulled the plug on Sanchez, however, Tebow unfortunately got hurt and couldn't take advantage of the opportunity. Tim's time with the Jets would end with him throwing just 8 passes and ran the ball just 32 times, and his time in New York would come to an end the following season. Tebow would later sign with the Patriots for the upcoming 2013 season, but was released during the final roster cuts. From there, he wouldn't get another opportunity until the 2015 season with Philadelphia, but again was cut before the start of the regular season. Crazy enough, 2015 wouldn't be the end of Tim Tebow in the NFL. We have to fast forward though a whole 6 years when Tim Tebow would get his final opportunity. For whatever reason, Urban Meyer's Jaguars decided to give Tim Tebow a shot at tight end. And while he again didn't make the final roster, there was a lot of controversy with the Jags signing Tebow, who hadn't played in the NFL in more than a few seasons. Controversy aside, that's a topic for another day. We should cover Urban Meyer one day on this channel though. But with his release from the Jaguars, Tebow's time in the NFL would finally come to an end. So what exactly happened? Why did he not pan out in the post-Denver era? To really get to the bottom of this, we have to go back to his scouting reports, where Mel Kiper was actually spot on his scouting report with Tim Tebow. Kiper stated that Tebow's skill set was that of an H-back. He wasn't sure that his talents at quarterback were good enough for the NFL. Unfortunately, Tebow never really improved in this game. Don't get me wrong, he was a leader on the gridiron, something that you look for in your quarterback. He motivated guys and never gave up himself, no matter the deficit. These were qualities that made Denver give him a shot. Things took a downward spiral though when the head coach who drafted him in Josh McDaniels was fired midway through his rookie season. And I've said this plenty of times on this channel. Head coaches like to bring in their own guys when they get to a new team. John Fox had no obligation to make Tebow his long-term answer. So when the moment came to grab Manning, he obviously took it. After Denver, it was hard for him to catch on with teams because Tebow, despite being this amazing athlete and questionable quarterback, he refused to play any other position. And this is something that could have saved his NFL career. As a runner, he was a beast. But because he never developed into the quarterback that he needed to be, and when you look at the man's resume, most teams were compelled to look the other way. The other downside is, whether we want to admit it or not, if Tebow wasn't already a megastar before 2011, he was definitely one after. And the downside of being a megastar is that it can hurt you if you aren't able to play up to a megastar's skill set, if that makes sense. Tebow's legacy will be remembered as a fun time in the NFL. Very few made watching football fun like Tebow did in college at Florida, and that charisma carried over into the NFL. Had his career panned out, Tebow is easily the most recognizable face in NFL history. I didn't mince my words with that. Had Tebow panned out in the NFL, I believe he would have been the most recognizable face and or name in NFL history.
Yes!
But since that was not the case, and we can only go based off of what actually happened, if I had to give the career of Tim Tebow a grade, sadly, he would only get a D+. That's gonna do it for today's video, ladies and gentlemen. It has been Triple DS. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and if you're still here, please consider subscribing. We're on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Until next time, love you guys. Ship boy!